Okay, so we did this yesterday. You don't have to rewrite these, but we talked about the 3 on there, points in a line and what it means to construct. And now we're going to perpendicular and parallel. Perpendicular intersects at a perfect right angle, 90 degrees, not 89.5, not 91. And parallel never touch, right? They're equally distant apart everywhere. And a compass. We talked about this too. You don't have to write that down. So how do we construct a parallel line? Okay, so if I just eyeball it, it could look parallel, but it may not truly be parallel. Parallel lines are going to have identical slopes. First, we select a point on the line. Any point, doesn't matter where. And then we draw a line segment lightly. I suggest doing this like in light pencil between B and the point A where we want to make our parallel line. Then we draw an arc from point B, like that, or like that. This metal circle in there is what needs to go on your dot. And then you can hold that down and move. These holes? Oh, well, this is to draw little circles. And this is to draw circles that are bigger than that, but not as big as this. So you can, if you were to put a pin in that middle metal circle, like this. I'm going to draw a circle on your paper, Nick. Hope you don't mind. To hold it, I can then use this little circle and draw around like that. Okay. Okay, so you draw the arc. Then the next thing that we do is label our intersections again, C and D. Again, you can do this all really lightly, or you don't even have to label them. You can just put dots there. Then we go to A, and we repeat the same arc. So if this was my length here, then same length. Or if this thing actually would reach out to here, you know, same hole in the safety one. And we put that as point E. And then we measure, and we make a arc through D. And we make a same arc on this arc. So this distance between C and D will be the same as between E and this intersection. Well, that's F. Then if you draw a line between A and F, it will be parallel to the line that goes through B and D. And the reason being is because basically what you've made are congruent triangles. See? And the bottom line of this triangle is the same distance from, these 2 point distances will be the same as these 2 point distances, which makes these perfectly the same slopes. As long as, again, if you're using this type of compass, you don't go like this and then come over here and accidentally move it. You want to make sure it's the same. And if you're using this compass, you have to look at which marking you used and make sure you use the same hole. And you can label the line X, or you can label the line whatever you want. You don't have to label it X. And then line X will be parallel to line W through point A. So that's how you make the parallel lines. So you have to do a line between A and B, an arc, the same arc, a little tiny arc, measure that, and then you can go through. So I'll show you that on paper here in a second, like with the camera. Okay, to do a perpendicular line, it's a little different. We put the point of the compass on this point. And I make an arc here, and I make an arc here. same distance. Okay. Put points on those. Then from B and C, I'll make a little arc underneath. And I have A and D now. And if I draw the line between those, it will be perpendicular. So this is kind of similar to, remember when we were making the bisector? And we went from the end and we made those two arcs and how it made a bisector? When we made that bisector is actually a perpendicular bisector that we made yesterday. So the difference is we don't have to make this top point or top X because that point's already there. So we're just making the bottom X, and instead of coming in and doing what we did before and having the overlap, we're creating the points because we didn't have end points. And they just need to be the same distance from A. Yeah.
Do we have to use a straight edge
to draw the lines? Yeah. Yeah.
because I took it in geometry and then the teacher said I didn't use a straight edge. So how do you do it? It's like line straight still.
I don't know. If it's a straight line, that's good. Okay, and then we label the line whatever we want, and it's perpendicular. So let's look at that on paper. Line Q, and we have point A, and we want to do parallel. Okay, so I'm going to use the safety compass. I just pick any point and make a point on the line. You don't have to label it, I'm just labeling it. And normally at this point what I do is I try to make all of my little marking lines and my arcs, I try to make them lighter because they're not the main thing I'm doing. So I come in and make that line. Can you guys see it? I can make it a little better. How about orange? Orange is good. Okay. Then putting that point right on B, that little metal circle. Like if you can't probably see it, but if I'm looking in it, I can see the ink, right? And I make an arc, and I'm going to use this one right here. Okay, and I made my arc. And for me to remember, I'm using the one right next to where this arrow is pointing. Okay, so then I go to A, and I make an arc. So now I have my, yes it does, I have my two arcs there. Then I'm going to put a point here, and here, and here. Okay. Now I'm going to find the distance between, that stinks. It's right on the rim. I need to go further out on my arc. So see what happened here is if my point D is going to hit right on that rim, I can't draw, there's no hole there. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to use pink. And I'm going to go further out so that the distance will be further. And I should probably see which hole I used. That one, okay. No, not that one. That one. Shoot. I'm going to start over because I did not give myself enough room on the paper. Stupid constructions. Actually, you know what? I'll make that a little closer. There. Pick a point. Make a line. make an arc. That went all the way to A. Okay, well, make another arc. Extend the line if you didn't draw the line far enough. There we go. Okay. I've got my 2 points here and here and here. And I need to measure the distance between here and that point. And when I'm looking down into the holes, I can see when the hole hits the line and the arc at the same time. And that's this hole right here. So I need to keep track of that. So I'm going to put the pin in it since it doesn't actually have a good marking on it. And there's that. Okay, now this point, if I draw a line between these 2 points, it's now parallel. Okay, and you can double check yourself. You can measure it. I've got 3.2, 3.2. Okay, so that's the parallel method. Now to do the perpendicular, we have a line. What letter would you like me to call the line? Okay, we have line Z and point W. Okay, and I want to do perpendicular. Okay, this time I go on point W and I want to make 2 arcs, or if you want, you can just make one big giant one. So I could go to here and I could just go whoosh. Okay, so now I have these 2 points. And the distance I used was this 2 pi circle. So I want to use that one again. And I come in from that point and from this point. And I have the X where they crossed. Oh, you guys can't see that, sorry. I have the X where they crossed. Again, I used the same distance from here to here as here to here. And I put a dot on that. Bring in my ruler. And I know that that's perpendicular. Not too terrible? Okay. Okay, so page 20 and 21, that's benchmark 9. And then construction practice 2, you just have to do the odds. Of benchmark 9, 20 and 21, and also construction practice 2. We did do this in algebra as well, but it's actually the geometry that you do in algebra versus and I guess some of it's algebra that you do in geometry, but I'm going to show you algebraically and non-algebraically. Okay, the midpoint formula is this right here though. You're taking the 2 x's, adding them together, divide by 2. The 2 y's, adding them together, divide by 2, and that gives you the midpoint of the segment. So you remember this is equally distant from the 2 ends. So when we have our 2 points, it doesn't matter which set is 1s and which set's 2s. It's just that if this is x1, this has to be y1. If this is x2, this has to be y2. So you can't have x1, y2. They have to both be 1s. Midpoint. Midpoint. So again, the midpoint is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay, this is algebraically. So I have 2 plus 4 over 2, that's the 2 x's. And then 6 plus 14 over 2, those are the 2 y's. Yeah, X and Y, it's always alphabetical, X, Y. So X comes before Y in the alphabet, so X comes before Y in the ordered pair. So I have 6 over 2 and 20 over 2, giving me 310 as my midpoint. Okay, so this is the algebra way to do it with algebra. Okay, non-algebraically, non-algebraically, I add the 2 points together, and then I divide them by 2.
See, that's much easier.
It's the same thing. It's actually identical. I'm adding the 2 points together and dividing by 2. It's just in this way I threw in a bunch of algebra, and in this way I had no algebra.
That's probably what throws me off.
You have to remember add, and you have to remember divide by 2. Sometimes we know one end, and we know a middle, and we don't know the other end. Okay? So we can find this. Again, we have algebra. That's not how you spell algebra. That's algebra. We have algebra, and then on the next slide we'll have no algebra. Okay, I'll show you 2 ways. Now remember we have our formula which tells me that the midpoint is equal to the x's being added, divided by 2, and the y's being added, divided by 2. Midpoint is right here. Okay, my end, I have one end, so I'll call that x1, y1. I don't have the other end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in x1, and I'm going to plug in y1, but I'm missing the other end. But I do know that when I worked this out, if I had had the other end, it gave me 6. And when I worked this out, when I had the other end, it would have given me a negative 12. So what that tells me is that negative 4 plus x2 divided by 2 is equal to 6. And 8 plus y2 divided by 2 is equal to negative 12. And now I have 2 equations that I can solve. I first multiply by 2, and that gives me negative 4 plus x2 is equal to 12. And because that 4 is negative, I'm going to add it to both sides. And that tells me that x2 is equal to 16. Then I'm going to follow the same exact process over here. I'm going to multiply by 2, which tells me that 8 plus y2 is equal to negative 24. Then I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides, and y2 is going to be equal to negative 32, which tells me that the end point that I was looking for was 16, negative 32. So I'm going to write down kind of like a little formula for this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end point and multiply it by 2, and then whatever answer I get, I'm going to subtract the midpoint from that. And that's going to give me the other end. Okay, so my end point, that's the end, take negative 4 and 8, and I multiply it by 2, which results in negative 8 and 16. I lied. I'm sorry. I did not mean to lie to you. My pants were on fire and everything. I'm going to take the midpoint and I'm going to multiply it by 2. And then I'm going to subtract the end. I got myself backwards, and that gives me the other end. And then I erase that. So I'm going to take this midpoint. I'm going to multiply it by 2, which is going to give me 12 and negative 24. I need to subtract the end, which is negative 4 and 8. Okay? But when you do this, you need to remember I'm subtracting a negative. So that's 12 minus negative 4, which is the same thing as 12 plus 4. Don't forget that double negative becomes a positive, okay? So 12 plus 4 is 16. Negative 24 minus 8 gives me negative 32. And this is the other end. You want to see a couple more like that? Okay. An end point and the midpoint. And we want to find the other end, which I can't spell that either apparently, which is B. Okay. So algebra, not algebra. Okay. With algebra, my midpoint is equal to my end point, my missing end point divided by 2. My other end, my y, my missing y divided by 2. These go together. Actually, let's not use red. Let's use blue. These go together. And these go together. Okay. So I have 4 plus x2 divided by 2 is equal to 6. And I have negative 2 plus y2 divided by 2 is equal to 5. Multiply both sides by 2 here. And I have 4 plus x2 is equal to 12. Subtract 4. x2 is equal to 8. Multiply by 2. And I have negative 2 plus y2 is equal to 10. Add 2. And that gives me y2 is equal to 12. Okay, so my end point B would be 8, 12. Without algebra, I'm going to do 2 times my midpoint, which is going to give me 12, 10, and then I'm going to subtract my other end point. 12 minus 4 is 8. 10 minus negative 2, that's 10 plus 2, is 12. Okay, you just have to remember to bring in that double negative. We asked to do things like find the midpoints of triangle sides. And there's a reason that you'll need to know the midpoint of a side of a triangle later on when we deal with the triangles units. But since we're talking about midpoints now, it'll be easier to kind of tie this together so that when we get to that point, you'll have already done it before, and so then it won't be as challenging. So I have the vertices at the sides of a triangle, and I want to find the midpoint. So first I actually draw the triangle. I get a piece of graph paper, I plot the points, and I want to find the midpoints of each of these sides. The reason I do this is because it gives me a visual of which points I need to put together, and that way I know I got them all. Okay, so I've got my triangle. This was 1, -6, 1, 3, and -3, 2. Okay.
So this is a triangle.
No, it's not triangle proof. I'm going to find the midpoints of each of the sides. One side is LM, one side is MN, and the other side is LN. Okay. I've got LM, so I have -3 plus 1 divided by 2, and 2 plus -6 divided by 2. So that gives me -2/2, -4/2. So my midpoint is actually going to be -1, -2. Did I write that point down wrong? Ah, I did. It's 1 negative. It's -1/6. I wrote -1 -6. See, you guys got to catch me when I'm lying to you. That makes a huge difference. This isn't right. Did I write the other ones down correctly? 1, 3, -3, 2. Yeah, I did. Okay, it's just that one. Let's try that again. -3 plus -1 divided by 2. Those are my x's. And 2 plus 6 divided by 2, my y's. It gives me -4/2 and 8/2, which gives me -2, 4, which makes a lot more sense. -2, 4. My midpoint would be right there. Okay, for the next one, we'll do orange. We'll do MN, and I add my x's, and I add my y's, and I get 0/2 and 9/2. And remember, 0 is allowed to be on top. That's okay. You just can't have 0 in the denominator. So that's 0 and 4.5. So 0 and 4.5. Oh, looky right there. Okay. What color?
Green.
That one?
No, the one above it.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm doing LN. So I have -3 plus 1 divided by 2, and 2 plus 3 divided by 2. So that gives me -2/2 and 5/2. So -1 and 2.5. -1, 2.5 is going to be right there. So I found the midpoints of all the triangles sides. Again, this will be important when we talk about triangles and we get into medians and altitudes and angle bisectors and things like that of a triangle, and we'll need to know those midpoints. But for right now, because we're doing midpoints, that way it'll be comfortable when we get to it in relation to these other concepts. Any questions? Because if I hadn't drawn the picture and I had written that down wrong, like I did originally, and I just found the point, I'd have been like, yeah, whatever. It was like -2, -4, which put it way down here. So as soon as I went to try to look for that point, I went, wait a minute, my triangle is up here. I did something very wrong. So like even just a quick sketch of the picture helps not only to figure out which sides go together for the pairings of the numbers, but it also helps if you make a major mistake and you find your midpoint and your midpoint's way over here, you know you made a mistake and you got to go back and look at your work. We're using that x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So I had the 6 plus 12 divided by 2 and then -2 plus 4 divided by 2. So that's 18 divided by 2 gave me the 9. And here's 2 divided by 2, and that's where I got the 1. On the midpoints, do you prefer the algebraic way or the not algebraic way?
Whichever way is going to be on the test. Well, no.
No, the test. Yeah, there's not, no, on the test it's going to tell you to find the other end. I'm not going to tell you you have to use one method or the other. Okay, so the not algebra way, I took that midpoint 2, 5, and I multiplied it by 2, which gave me 8, 10. Then I subtracted 6, negative 3 from that. So I had 8 minus 6, which gave me the 2, and then 10 minus negative 3. And because I have that double negative, it becomes a positive, so I got that 13.